So yeah, guys, I wanted to leave some time just if anyone has like specific opening questions, maybe we can spend like 5-10 minutes per question just to give you guys a chance. Like if you have repertoire concerns, you don't know what to play against a certain opening, or you want a suggestion, I'm pretty good at this stuff. Not as good as like let's say Jan Gustafsson, but I'm okay. I'm decent.
What do you play when you need to win against D4?
Against which one?
D4.
Against D4. I mean, personally, I mean, the King's Indian for me is my main line. So I kind of automatically am playing for a win against D4. Basically against anyone. What do you play right now?
I mean, I've been playing a Nimzo Indian because I'm afraid to be worse, I guess. I'm afraid to be technically worse.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, so there's different styles to choosing your openings with black. Like you basically have to make this kind of trade-off. If you want winning chances, you have to play a risky opening. Sometimes strategically risky, sometimes dynamically risky. I would say the Sicilian is not strategically risky at all because black just gets a nice structure in the long run and is doing well. But the Sicilian is really dynamically risky because if white plays one of the sharp lines, the Keres attack, English attack, Yugoslav attack, and they know what they're doing, then you could run into some king safety issues with black. King's Indian, king is going to be safe in most cases. This is a strategically risky opening because you might fall behind in space. White might get this big center, you have no counterplay, and then you just get squeezed. So there are different types of risks black can take depending on what you feel more comfortable with. And if you're playing a more solid line like the Nimzo, you basically just have to rely on your technical skills to beat lower rated players. I honestly feel, this comes up a lot. I honestly feel like players kind of worry a little bit too much about like, oh, what if my opponent is playing for a draw from the opening? Because number one, this doesn't happen that much. Most players are like ambitious. They're trying to fight for the initiative with white. They're trying to win. And number two, if someone let's say below 2400 is playing for a draw with white, like a lot of times that says something about them as a player, and like they're going to be playing a little bit more passively. They're going to be very conducive to exchanges that aren't necessarily good for them. So they're going to give you a ton of opportunities to kind of just get a slightly better position and then try to outplay them and like kind of grind them down. I would say D4 is definitely a more, let's say, like solid approach for white, because when you play E4, I think black has a lot of options where, like the Sicilian, for example, you can just play for a win right from the opening. I don't think you're really risking that much because the Sicilian is just such a solid opening. Against D4, however...
Against D4, it's just hard to create such immediate imbalances without compromising yourself.
Yeah, no, it really is, 100%. Like with D4, you're either trying to equalize with something like Nimzo, QGD, Slav, one of these openings, or you're taking, I wouldn't say huge risk, but you have to play a riskier line with King's Indian, Grunfeld, Benoni, Benko, one of these options. Of those...
The only super risky opening I know about is just the Dutch. I'm not a fan of the Dutch.
Dutch is playable. Like, the Dutch is definitely risky, both strategically and dynamically, I would say, because you're weakening your king for the long run. But a lot of players find it actually super playable, I would say, because it's not like you're losing from the opening. It's very playable. It's just that it really matters if you feel comfortable playing that position or not. If you feel comfortable with the structure like Stonewall or Leningrad Dutch, Classical Dutch, then it's very playable. I think there's no serious drawbacks. But if you play that structure just because you're trying to play for a win and then you don't feel comfortable in it, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Now, the options I mentioned, actually, Grunfeld, as far as like theory goes, is very solid. It stands right now on just very solid ground. It's a lot of theory for black to learn. I would say that's kind of the main drawback. But
I've been seeing a lot of white players who don't like the Grunfeld. They play F3 here. F3.
Yeah, I would say I play this a bit as well, actually, as white. Because from white's point of view, if you try to get an advantage against the Grunfeld, you're not going to be successful. Because the Grunfeld is just super, super solid. And against people like MVL, who play the Grunfeld like every game, players basically stopped playing d4, c4 against them because like they just can't get anywhere. So they try this f3 line, they try some other anti-Grunfeld lines, like starting with knight f3, c4, this kind of thing. By the way, you said you played Nimzo, so what happens if... So I actually feel like...
play the Bogo.
Got it. Got it.
I played the Bogo in my last tournament, and I felt like I had 2 draws as black, but I had like no chance to win at all. I was kind of looking to switch out of that. Or
Raise the Curve has seen my Bogo. He's seen his bishop d2, queen he hates his queen
I played
e7.
that line too. But I just felt like it's very... The whole time I was just like trying to equalize, and like I played like pretty intensely the whole game, and like I didn't really have any chance for an advantage. So I think I have to either improve it or switch out of it.
I'll give you guys one suggestion here, because I used to be a Nimzo player, and then, yeah, I mean, the main drawback of the Nimzo is this move 3 knight f3, basically. Because the Nimzo, I feel like, is actually a great opening to play for a win with black without taking a lot of risk, because you do get some imbalance here, especially if you get one of these structures with bc3, or if white plays queen c2, then okay, they're definitely spending more time in the opening. In the Bogo against bishop d2, I used to play this line with c5. I don't know if either of you have experience with this one.
No, I've never tried that.
This one, I think you should check out, because at first glance it looks like how could this structure possibly be good for black? But it's actually quite tricky for white. And so the idea is basically your setup is almost the same against everything.
You're trying to lock the queen side, right?
It's like a5, d6, b6, bishop b7. Knight can come to either a6 or d7 in castles. So usually something that might happen is like g3, for example. I forget the right move order, but let's say like b6, bishop g2, bishop b7. This can also come out of a Queen's Indian sometimes. Let's say d6, knight d2, castles. Very typical setup. Like I feel like I probably got this type of position in Blitz quite a bit. You can also start with a5 here, so that a3 knight can come out to a6 and kind of be ready to recapture this one. And all black really needs to be ready for here. Maybe queen c7 is another move that could be played.
How desperately important is a5 in this?
a5 is needed to keep control over the b4 square, because against a3, I actually feel like maybe I didn't come up with the right move order here. Against a3, we want to be able to meet this with either knight a6 behind the pawn, or in this case we might have to play knight c6. You'd have to check out the theory, but the main idea is that, okay, whenever white is trying to push e4, we're ready to meet this with e5. Maybe not immediately, but in most cases we're trying to get e5 in, and then we're basically trying to get this structure where it's like a King's Indian, but we've already traded off our bad bishop, and I would say this is kind of like a dream scenario. Now bishop on b7 is going to be bad, but you can always reroute it once the structure kind of gets opened up.
Feels like the b pawn's kind of shielding a lot of the annoying white initiative in this line.
Right, because in the other lines, white goes like b4, c5, and yeah, that kind of plays on the queen side, whereas this pawn is actually not so easy to deal with. If white just goes for like immediate a3, I mean, black can take this one. This is also a playable structure, especially if they play it early, let's say like knight a3 or rook a3, and then just playing like b6, bishop b7, d6, queen c7, and kind of sticking to the structure.
I've played a few games where instead of going into the Bogo, I've tried this in a couple of Blitz games. Instead of going into that, after knight f3, I play c5.
Benoni.
Kinda, yeah. Going into a Benoni structure, but you have the pawn on e6.
Right. No, this is modern Benoni. And a lot of players won't play Benoni, let's say, in this position, because after c5, d5, here white has a ton of options here. Basically can do anything, but like e4, f4 is dangerous, e4, bishop d3 is dangerous. But all of the most dangerous lines actually don't include knight f3 immediately. It's very important. So once white does play knight f3, then c5 becomes, I would say, like 30% more playable compared to before. Because since white is committed to this one, now they can't do the most dangerous lines with f4, and the other lines are just automatically less dangerous. I mean, Benoni is still strategically very risky opening because you're kind of left with this d6 pawn, and white gets space in the center. So, I mean, Benoni is certainly not for everyone. I never particularly liked it with black. But it is an option. I would say it's one of the sharper options.
I didn't think that my move was a Benoni, but it is a Benoni. No,
Yeah, no, this is just transposing directly.
I don't want to be a Benonier.
So then, yeah, I would say don't go for c5. Go for either bishop b4 check. I mean, the queen's Indian, theoretically, it stands quite solid here, but it can be hard to play this one for a win. You're also experiencing problems if white goes g3 on move 3, because here it's kind of difficult to play the queen's Indian in this move order because you have to play like knight c6, and this is quite awkward. Do you guys both go for the bogo against g3 as well?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
It's very playable here in bishop d2. Again, you can choose from queen e7. a5 is also possible, both in this line and the other one. c5 was my choice just because I felt like strategically this one kind of just puts pressure for white, and I won a lot of games with black, especially against lower rated players like 2200 players that are like trying to be solid, but the position has some difficulties. One player, if you guys want to look into this line to study, I think that played this a lot. There's a few, but one that did it quite a bit is Wang Hao. He had quite a few nice wins in this one. So you can look up his games, but I think there are a few players that play this one regularly. And one thing I'll note is that this line is not popular at like elite levels. I mean, the whole Bogo Indian is not popular at elite levels, but it is still kind of popular at like 2600 level.
Is the Bogo not popular at elite levels?
Yeah, because it has this reputation. They usually will play d5. Yeah, this is what the top guys consider kind of like the most solid here, but they're not looking to win with black unless their opponent does something wrong. They're looking to just equalize and then see. So they really don't care about like playing for a win in a lot of their games with black, because they're usually playing someone that's also 2800 or so. But you will see a lot of GMs at like 2600 who are playing open tournaments, and they do need to play for a win. They'll play more Bogo Indian and kind of riskier stuff because, of course, they're trying to create chances against lower rated players.
I do wish more elite players would play at a lower level, but they're all stuck in a bubble somewhere. A tank.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love the like Gibraltar Open and those types of tournaments, because then they're forced to like play like 2600 talented GMs, 2500s, and they really have to like prove why they're so good.